If you have $1 million or more, my question for you is, are you looking to just get estate documents in place, or are you looking to have an actual cohesive estate plan in place, which is factoring all of the areas of financial planning, such as tax planning, estate planning, obviously, of how do we transfer wealth to our next generation? How do we transfer wealth to our spouse if one of us were to pass away? How do we make sure we're taking advantage of more of these advanced concerns with taxes and estate planning versus just having the right documents? And so that's something that we get a lot of people that come in and see us that they're not looking for estate documents. Those are pretty simple to put in place. They're looking for a more advanced estate plan. And so in today's video, we're going to break down the differences between estate documents and having a cohesive estate plan, and also the things you need to be aware of to have in place if you do have that $1 million or more and are in need of some of these more advanced type of concepts. So that's what's on slate here today for Joe Knows Retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So let me first start off with this video by just talking about how important it is to have estate planning documents in place. We believe that not everyone has estate planning documents in place, but everyone needs to have estate planning documents in place. We say that anyone 18 or older needs some sort of basic documents in place. And unfortunately, 30% of people have an estate plan in place when they pass away, and that is it. And so that's why this is extremely valuable to put in place. But again, the estate planning documents are pretty simple. And so at our firm, we have an estate planning attorney who meets with our clients here at our office to ensure they have everything in the right place. And something we love about the relationship is we collaborate with the attorney. So we don't just tell our clients, hey, go to this attorney and get it done. No, we have meetings with the attorney. We have conversations with the attorney. We give the attorney our point of view. We're educating the clients of what they're going to be needing and how we're going to communicate with the attorney. We're the point person in that. We just need the attorney to draft the documents, because that's simply all it is. And you can do documents drafting on your own, and there's no issues with that. You just have to be very careful. I personally would never do that because I don't want to have anything be wrong. And if I'm not doing it every day, I'm not going to trust myself to do it. I'm going to trust an attorney that does that every single day. But these documents are pretty simple, to do. It's pretty common language, unless you are doing some more advanced estate planning documents, which we'll talk about. And that's where I would consider that more of an estate plan, because you need to have a plan in place if you are going to do more advanced, because what's the purpose of those things? But the simple documents is power of attorneys, a will, a basic trust, all of these things are things that the majority of people should get in place. So that's important. Just check the box, meet with an attorney, get it done. Everyone's good on that. But the importance of having an estate plan is a little different, because it now becomes more a part of, tax planning is really one of the biggest parts. But again, remember that, this video is for those with $1 million or more. And so what we typically see is that those with $1 million or more have not only more advanced tax concerns, but also more advanced estate planning concerns. So, some of the tax concerns that we're seeing are, if they want to leave money behind to their kids, for example, well, now those kids have to take out that IRA over 10 years. And so that can be a significant amount of tax that they're going to have to pay if you save quite a bit up to this point. And they shorten the gap. So they used to be able to allow them to do a stretch IRA and take it over their lifetime, but now they said, hey, we want our tax revenue, take it out in 10 years. And so there's ways around that, which we'll talk about in the video today, of certain strategies, such as a Roth IRA and things like a Roth conversion to ensure that you can leave behind that money to the kids tax-free over that 10-year period. And some of the advantage of doing that Roth is, one, if you're still working, you can contribute to either your Roth 401k or maybe a Roth IRA. You have to be aware of how much you're making. So if you make too much, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. You can do something called a backdoor Roth IRA to still take advantage of that. So just make sure you're aware of how all that works. And there's also Roth conversions, where Roth conversions are simply just taking your tax deferred and moving it to tax free. And we're seeing a lot of our clients do this right now because of lower tax rates that we're seeing, but also to make sure that their children don't have to pay that tax over that 10-year period. They'd rather pay the tax now versus later. And especially as this investment grows over time, they'd rather pay it on the seed versus the harvest, is something that analogy we use to kind of explain that concept of a Roth conversion. And a lot of it comes down to, too, you have to think, what are your kids' tax rates going to be? If your child's a teacher and their spouse doesn't work and they're in a lower income tax bracket, and you're in a higher tax bracket because maybe a pension, Social Security, big R&Ds, Well, maybe you don't do as much Roth conversion. Maybe you do leave the money to them in an IRA. Or maybe you are charitable minded. And as we know, if you leave an IRA to a charity, it's tax free. And so, we have one of our clients, they want to leave all their money to a charity. And so we're not doing large Roth conversions for them. We're doing small amounts to make sure that they have enough income, tax efficiently throughout their life. But, why pay taxes on something and then leave it to a charity? When if you leave it from a Roth, well, it's tax free, but you had to pay taxes. Where if you leave it from an IRA, we haven't paid taxes yet, and it's tax free. So again, you just want to be aware of that if you are charitable minded as well. That is going to be a big part of the estate planning. And with you being charitable minded, there's so many strategies to look at that are more advanced. And we consider someone who's given $5,000 to $10,000 a year, where there really starts to become a lot of benefits of tax planning for charitable planning, if that's you. And then you got to think too, if you want to give to a charity, do you want to do that now while you're living, or do you want to do that when you pass away? So that's why this is so important in estate planning. It's because if you do want to leave it when you pass away, there's certain strategies we can put in place. Maybe we look at a charitable remainder trust with any highly appreciated assets that you may have. Maybe you're selling a rental property that has a lot of gains. Maybe you had a stock that you've had forever that's grown tremendously over time. Well, this is something that you could put it in a charitable remainder trust where it's going to spit out income to you every year for the rest of your life. And then when you pass, the remainder of whatever's left, which, honestly, it may not be much if you live a long time, but the remainder would go to a charity. And the advantage of this is you get the tax deduction today to write it off with all of the benefit to do strategies like the Roth conversion we mentioned, or to write off other types of gains. And so this can be something that's not only a tax planning strategy, but also an income planning strategy, and also an estate planning strategy. And a unique strategy we've done with a charitable remainder trust is the income it pays you. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't want to leave the kids out of this. If all the money's going to go to charity and all the income's going to go to us, the kids are left out. Well, one solution is you just leave other assets to them, and so this is just a portion of your plan. Or something you can do with our clients who are really concerned about this is you just take the income, maybe you buy a life insurance policy, and now you have a death benefit that's tax-free going to the kids. So if you had a $1 million asset, you did put in the CRT, well, just go with the income payout, just get $1 million life insurance policy that's paid for this by the trust over time, and you get the benefits up front of the tax benefits. You get income, whatever's higher than the premium you're paying for the life insurance, which is typically the case, to enjoy. You get to leave the money to the charity, you get to leave some to the kids. It's a win-win all around, and it's just by implementing and layering different strategies on top of each other. So again, my whole point of going into that advanced consideration is that there's so much out there just like that if you are in that higher net worth space, that are realistic opportunities for you to take advantage of. And so if that's you, just make sure you're getting that type of planning that impacts both estate and tax planning with your charitable planning. And there's other strategies too, donor advised funds that you can do while you're living that can give you more tax write-offs to, again, do more Roth conversions to put you in a better position for that. And again, just layering different things on top of that. There's also the QCD idea too that you can do while you're living, of giving money to charity now. So if maybe you're not set on just giving all your money to charity when you pass, you want to do it now. Well, starting at 70.5, you can give money from your IRA to a charity tax-free, and that's called a qualified charitable distribution. So these are all different types of strategies you can look at to lower that tax burden over time. Another tax planning strategy that we see from an estate planning standpoint is when it comes to your capital gain type investments. So again, we kind of talked about with the CRT, with any rental properties or highly appreciated stocks, but being aware of how these capital gains works is extremely important. So understand that, let's say you bought Apple stock a while back and you bought it for $1,000 and now it's worth $100,000. Well, the good news is if you just leave it there and don't touch it, when you pass away, that stock could go to your kids tax-free, because there's something called a stepped-up basis. And this works for rental properties as well. Any type of non-qualified type investment are the current rules of this. And so if that's the case, well, then you're saving 15% in capital gains in most cases. The brackets for capital gains are 0%, 15, and 20%. Most people sit in that 15%. You're saving about $15,000 in taxes by just simply waiting to sell that stock. And so those are decisions that we have to make with a lot of people we work with that have highly appreciated assets is, hey, maybe we don't love that we're all in one stock and it's not very diversified, but what's the consequence if we sell it as taxes when we may not have to pay taxes? And so sometimes we make that decision, other times we don't. The key is to just think through it and see what your situation is. right? If it's 50% of your portfolio in this one stock, well, we may need to make sure we don't fail in retirement. If it's 10% of your retirement and you're probably never going to need that money anyways, well, maybe we can take that extra risk in one stock, especially if you like the stock and you expect it to do well. If it's a bad stock and it's projected to do bad, well, maybe you're better off just to pay the 15% tax, because if it's a 20% market loss, well, you're actually lost more than what it would just pay taxes at when it was at its highest, right? So those are the considerations to look at there. And so you just want to be very careful of selling properties too before you pass away, if your child wants to deal with it at that time. Some people want to sell it off before so they don't have the headache, but they could be incurring a big tax burden there to be aware of. But also understand for your primary residence, that works a little differently. Again, if you left it to your kids, it would be a stepped up, so that's the same. But as far as you can sell it during your lifetime and be exempt of capital gains up to $500,000 if you're married, or $250,000 if you're single. So there could be some opportunities there to sell off that type of property, but rental properties are not under that exemption, so you just want to be aware of that. And so something else we look at for our clients who have non-retirement investments. So let's say you took $100,000 that was just sitting in your bank account and you wanted to invest it. Well, we typically look to invest that in either individual stocks or ETFs. We typically don't want to invest that money into mutual funds because mutual funds have what's called phantom gains, and that means you have to pay taxes on all of the trades they make within those investments each year, which again raises your cost basis and allows your kids to have less opportunity to get that stepped up basis that we've been talking about. Whereas stocks, well, typically if we pick a stock that doesn't have a lot of dividends, well, there's not going to be a lot of paying out of dividends or capital gains. That's going to see a lot of appreciation over time, and we're going to be in a better spot. And also with an ETF, there's typically less trading involved in an ETF or maybe an index fund, better known as. And based on that, now we can get more growth appreciation without paying the taxes now and get this stepped up later. So those are all considerations that we look at when thinking about how we're going to pass this on, when we're no longer here. And something else we look at for capital gains management, if it's a married couple, is being aware of who the owner of that non-retirement account is. Most people just have it jointly owned, and that can be fine. But if one spouse passes, you only get a 50% step up. You don't get the full step up. So in the Apple stock scenario, 1,000 we bought it for, 100,000 it's worth now. If it's only owned in one of their names, let's say it's owned in client one's name and then client one passes, well, client two now has a cost basis of 100,000 versus if we own that jointly, well, now we're only getting half a step up. And so that can be extremely important in planning, where maybe one spouse is older, maybe one spouse is in poor health. We probably want to own that account in their name if we expect them to pass away first, so that spouse can value off that stepped up basis. And you have to understand what state you are, right? If you're in a community property state, this may not work as efficiently, but many states realize that this is a real opportunity to take advantage of. And so if that's you, again, something to be aware of when it comes to estate planning. We look to do this with a lot of our clients to make sure that we are prepared in that case. Now, the risk of this is if that spouse who's older and poor health lives further than the other spouse, well, now you don't get that 50% step up. You don't get any step up unless you leave it to the kids, obviously. So again, just different things to be aware of, but you just have to play the game of the odds and what are the numbers at that point. Something else we always encourage with the difference of estate planning documents and estate plan is, again, get all your documents in place, but making sure we have all of our investments and everything else consolidated, I think is something people really value. We get a lot of people that come to us for this particular reason. Hey, I've got these investments in all these different places. I just want to ensure that if something happens to me or my spouse or both of us, everything is organized, cohesive, and working together. And so I think that can be extremely valuable. Something we recommend for our clients that we actually do with them is we give them a booklet with all of their accounts that are with us and that they're outside accounts with banks and any life insurances, any all their estate planning documents, all in one place, so that when they do pass, the other person knows exactly where to go to get that, to know everything in their situation, all of their passwords, directions to how to do things, that maybe they weren't able to do. And then, a lot of people value having that trusted relationship with a team, someone like us or, a financial planning team where they can go to them and know that they can help assist with all of that transfer of wealth to, either the spouses or to the children or to whoever it may be. And I think, that having the documents in place has been so valuable. I mean, we've had spouses come in with just holding that document and just saying how grateful they were to have all of this organized. Obviously, there's nothing we can do to help with the grieving of the loss of a spouse, But from a financial standpoint, we can make that part of it a lot easier and a lot less stressful by just being organized ahead of time, but also being there for that spouse to take care of a lot of things they need done. And this works the same way when both spouses passes, and I would say it's almost even more important at that point because they may have no idea what's going on with your specific situation. So having that document, having that team can really help guide them in the right direction. And again, we don't know when this time's going to come, so getting this organized is going to be important sooner rather than later. Anything can happen at any time, and just being over-prepared is always better than being unprepared. And another consideration we see from the estate plan versus estate documents, the estate document's important to show you, like, hey, here's where the assets are going, here's where, here's who I want to be the power of attorney for healthcare, here's who I want it to be for financial. That's all great, but it doesn't necessarily share what your values with your money are for when you are no longer here. And so that's where, working with that team who really understands you and your purpose can really make sure that, not only those documents dictated the right way. I mean, right, if you do a trust, for an example, you can get really particular in a trust of how you want your money left. For example, we had a client where their son was not the best with money. He was very good spender, I'll say. And so for them, they didn't want to leave all that money to him right up front. They wanted to leave it to him over a period of time, and that can be done in things like a trust. Now, not everyone needs a trust, but if you do want to get more particular, then that's where it could start to become more valuable. So having someone help you draft that and what you want that to look like is important, but also, let's say that your children are going to be working with your financial planning team. Well, now that financial planning team can help instill, hey, mom and dad wanted to do this with this wealth. At the end of the day, they can do whatever they want. We can't force them to do anything. But I think it helps them to give them a little reminder or a little education or a little backstory of, hey, here's what mom and dad did to get this money. Here's what mom and dad have done to preserve this money. Basically telling them, don't go spend all this money foolishly. Make sure it's used with purpose. Make sure you use it for something that your parents would really want to see you do. And maybe your parents want to see them spend it all. And if that's the case, then great. Then those values get lived out and they make sure they're expressed. We make sure no money's saved. So, but again, the key is just having that plan in place of what do you want to see done with the money, your life savings that you've spent so hard working. And it's the other consideration is, hey, if we are going to leave all this money behind, is that your true goal? And for many people it is, and that's great. But if it's not, well, we better get busy trying to spend this money because we can't bring this U-Haul, behind our hearse when we pass away, right? We can't take it with us. And so now's the time to enjoy that, or to make sure we have a plan in place so that it is enjoyed the right way. And so those are some of the basics, I'll call it, when it comes to estate planning. But one of the bigger, more advanced things with estate planning is when it comes to what advanced documents do you need. So we talked about the basic documents, but do you need an irrevocable life insurance trust? Do you need that CRT we talked about earlier, right? Do you need a revocable living trust, and how should that be organized, right? There's all these more advanced type of things that take a little more analysis to decide what to do. And most attorneys can do all that for you, but are they going to be able to understand why you need that and how it's going to benefit your full financial plan? And so again, what we typically see with estate planning attorneys, and again, this is why we decided to bring the attorney in-house, because we would send people to attorneys, but they wouldn't understand their current situation. The only way that attorney could be successful is if we sat with them and said, hey, here's our plan of what we're trying to achieve, and this is what we want to do. And so like we have some attorneys that we work with where all they do is draft the advanced documents for our clients, and then we help educate our clients of, hey, here's why we should do this type of trust, or here's why we should do this type of planning, and then they make sure that it gets done the right way. But if we were to say, hey, client, go talk to them and figure it out, well, one, they're going to have to pay a way higher bill because they're going to have to pay for the attorney's time to figure out who they are, what they're trying to achieve, and all the details, where that's our job, in my mind, to do all of that. But second is we're risking them even getting it done the right way because they may not fully understand the conversation with the clients. I mean, we spend many, many hours having conversation with our clients, getting a feel of who they are. We almost want to know them more than they know themselves. And so if the attorney doesn't understand that, they may end up drafting or recommending a document that isn't in the client's best interest. Not because they were trying to do something falsely, but simply because they just don't understand. And that's why we like the collaboration, is so we can avoid anything like that happening. And so again, if you start to have $5 million or more is when a lot of these advanced type of concepts really start to come in place. I mean, there's something that you really have to be aware of with the estate tax, is something we also consider with estate planning. This may not be something that everyone needs to be concerned about right now because the estate tax limits are so high. And if the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act extends, which could potentially be the case, then that's likely to stay like that it is for a while. So maybe nothing we need to worry about then, because it only really applies to the top 1%. So unless you have, $15 million or more, maybe that's something for you to start thinking about. But for those who have less than that, you still have to keep this on your radar. And our clients with $5 million or more, we're really looking at this really closely, because as you look in time, the estate tax limit has been very low historically. It's been low as $1 million or less. In 2001, I believe. In 1997, I think it was even 600,000, meaning if you had over those limits, let's just use $1 million as an example. If you had $3 million, well, you had $2 million above the limit, and the estate tax is 40 to 50% typically. And so you could be paying $1 million in taxes, just, not you, but your beneficiaries have to pay $1 million in taxes just because we weren't able to plan. The good news is you can use certain type of trust to get that out of your estate to make sure that's not, subject to the estate tax consequence there. And so again, advanced planning can help you with all that. Again, documents can help you with that, but do you have the right plan in place and thinking ahead? So again, that's why we always think it's important to work with a team on things like this. And if your advisor's not necessarily doing estate planning and he's just, deferring everything to the attorney, you may have some gaps within your plan, especially if you have $1 million or more, $5 million or more, like we've been talking about. And if this is the type of plan you're looking for, and you see value in having more of that estate plan versus just documents, well, really you want all of it together, feel free to schedule a time with our team. We can see if we help you, can help you. We do more advanced tax planning, estate planning for the clients we work with. So if that's the type of planning you're looking for, then just go ahead and schedule a time with us. We try to take all those calls we can to see if we can help you or make sure you're set up for success. We always want to make it clear we can't work with everyone that reaches out to us, so this gives us the opportunity to see if it could be a good fit. And if so, we'll schedule another session to explore further to see if we want to make that decision to move forward with each other, working together. And if so, that's great. If not, we'll make sure that you understand how on the right path to success, or being able to continue to watch these videos to try to get as much content as possible. So with that being said, that's all we've got on today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement.